I watched him pull my drawer open like it was already his. My own son, Mark, tiptoed into my bedroom at 10:47 p.m., whispering plans to stage photos and sell my house. "Once Mom's in the facility," he said, like I wasn't 10 steps away. But the real slap? Seeing Linda, his wife, point at my jewelry box, Harold's wedding ring still inside, and mutter, "We can list it all after she signs." They thought I was asleep. They thought I was blind. What? They didn't know? I'd turned the bedroom camera back on, and I wasn't just watching, I was recording. I labeled the first file Night 1, because I knew there would be more. And when I finally hit play on the last clip, what I saw changed everything. My name is Eleanor Monroe, and I'm 75 years old. Since losing my husband Harold 3 years ago, I've settled into quiet routines in our Maple Street bungalow, where I raised our son Mark. The morning air carries notes of menthol liniment mixed with Earl Grey tea, while the mantel clock marks time in steady ticks. Mark, my only child, visits more frequently now, but his attention drifts to paperwork instead of memories, always asking about deeds, bank accounts, and what he calls modernizing my finances. My jaw tightens each time he mentions power of attorney. What he doesn't know is that the old security camera installed near my bed after that fainting spell years ago still sits quietly behind the lace curtains. But let me start from the beginning. I'd always made lasagna on Tuesdays. It was one of those comforting rhythms that kept me anchored after Harold passed. The gentle bubbling of the sauce, the precise layering of noodles, the way the cheese would brown just so under the broiler. Have you ever noticed how ritual gives shape to an empty house? That particular Tuesday, Mark and his wife joined me for dinner. The kitchen was warm with oregano and garlic, our plates clinking against forks as Mark chatted about his work at the investment firm. He seemed different, more animated than usual, his cheerfulness feeling practiced, like an actor who'd rehearsed his lines too many times. "Here, Mom, let me handle those dishes," he insisted, practically wresting the soap bottle from my hands. The way he scrubbed those pans with such exaggerated enthusiasm made my mother's instinct prickle. Something was off. When they finally prepared to leave, Mark hugged me tight. "Love you, Mom," he said, but the words carried a polish I'd never heard before. That's when I caught it, his eyes darting to the hallway, where the old camera bracket still hung empty. It was quick, just a flicker, but in that moment, my heart skipped. Later that night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed watching streetlights from Maple Street cast silver patterns across my ceiling, replaying Mark's voice in my head. You know that feeling when something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it? The words themselves were normal enough, but their delivery felt hollow, like a shell of affection wrapped around something else. That's when I remembered the bedroom security camera. We'd installed it years ago. After that awful fainting spell, Harold had been so worried about me being alone upstairs. The camera had given us both peace of mind back then, though I hadn't used it since the dizzy spells passed. It was still there, nestled in the corner where the lace curtains met the baseboard, gathering dust but otherwise intact. My fingers weren't as steady as they used to be as I climbed out of bed and found the old hub in my bedside drawer. Would it even work after all this time? The technology wasn't exactly new, but it was simple enough. Just needed power and Wi-Fi. I plugged it in, entered the network password Harold had written in his precise engineer's handwriting on a yellowed sticky note, and waited. A small green light blinked to life. "Just checking on that terrier," I whispered to myself, though no one was there to hear. Our little dog had a habit of sneaking onto the bed when he thought I was asleep. That's all I wanted to verify, wasn't it? But if that was true, why were my hands shaking as I opened the recorder app on my phone? I set the phone on my nightstand, promising myself I'd review whatever it captured after my morning tea. Just a quick check, nothing more. But as I lay back down, my eyes fixed on that dark lens in the corner, questions crept in uninvited. What would it show me? What secrets lived in the space between a "ooh, son's rehearsed, I love you," And the truth? Morning came with its usual quiet dignity. I'd always been an early riser. Harold used to tease me about racing the sun to the kitchen. The familiar ritual of brewing Earl Grey helped steady my hands as I spooned loose leaves into the strainer, watching steam curl up from my favorite blue teapot. You'd think, after all these years, I'd switch to something simpler, but some comforts you just don't surrender. With tea in hand, I settled into Harold's old armchair by the window and opened the camera app on my phone. The first few clips were exactly what I'd expected. Our terrier, Chester, sneaking onto the bed, tail wagging as he made himself at home on Harold's side. I couldn't help but smile. Some habits never change. Then I saw it, 10:47 p.m. The timestamp made my finger pause mid-scroll. I hadn't fallen asleep until after 11, but there they were, Mark and his wife, easing my bedroom door open like thieves in their own mother's house. The audio was soft but clear enough. They moved straight to my dresser, where Harold's mother's jewelry box sat next to our wedding photo. Mark's wife pointed at the window, whispering something about good light for the listing photos. Once Mom's in the facility, we can stage it properly, Mark replied. My teacup clinked against its saucer. Facility? The word hung in the air like poison. How long after she signs? His wife asked. A week, maybe 2. The realtor says Maple Street properties are moving fast. My hand found Harold's cardigan, folded neatly at the foot of the bed where I'd left it last night. The wool was soft, worn thin at the elbows from years of Sunday crosswords and evening reads. A dull ache spread through my chest as I watched my son, my only child, plot to strip away everything his father and I had built. I forced myself to replay the clip. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe there was some explanation that wouldn't shatter my world. But no, the second viewing only brought sharper clarity. Every word fell like a hammer. Power of attorney, quick sale, retirement community. They'd planned it all, down to which realtor they'd use. With trembling fingers, I saved the video file twice, once to my phone's secure folder and once to that cloud storage Mark himself had insisted I set up last Christmas. Wouldn't he appreciate the irony of that later? I labeled the clip Night 1 with a timestamp, knowing in my bones there would be more to come. The old grandmother clock in the hallway, another piece they'd probably already priced for auction, chimed 7 times as I locked my phone in the nightstand drawer. My tea had gone cold, untouched. Before closing the app, I let the video play one final time, pausing on Mark's face as his lips formed the word sell. It was strange, really, how much he looked like Harold in that moment. Same strong jaw, same determined set to his mouth. But Harold had used that determination to build this home, not tear it apart. Well, I whispered to the empty room, your father taught me patience too, Mark. Lessons learned at that man's side had served me well for 52 years of marriage. They would serve me now in ways our son never expected. I picked up my cold tea and headed to the kitchen. Best to start breakfast, keep to routine. After all, proof needs silence to grow, and I had seeds to plant. Through the window, I watched the morning sun climb over Maple Street. The same view that had greeted Harold and me for 40 years. The same view Mark thought he could simply price and package and sell away. But I'd learned long ago, sometimes the quietest gardeners grow the strongest roots. On my phone screen, still frozen in the nightstand drawer, Mark's mouth shaped that single word, sell. Morning light streamed through the kitchen window as I settled into my usual breakfast routine. Funny how ordinary moments become your armor when your world's shifting underneath you. The toaster popped, right on schedule. 2 slices, golden brown, just the way Harold used to time them. You know those old detective shows Harold loved? The ones where they'd stake out a suspect and document every little detail? That's exactly what I found myself doing, except my suspect was my own son, and my stakeout post was my favorite kitchen chair with its view of the front walk. Mark showed up at 9:15 a.m. sharp, earlier than his usual Wednesday visits. I watched through the gauzy curtains as he intercepted Jerry, our mailman. They chatted like old friends while Mark collected my mail, tucking it into his leather briefcase before heading to the door. A knot formed in my stomach. When had this become his routine? "Morning, Mom." He breezed in, all sunshine and smiles. "Thought I'd save Jerry a few steps? I'll sort through this for you later. Probably just the usual junk mail anyway." I nodded, keeping my face carefully blank. "That's thoughtful, dear. Coffee?" While he rattled on about work, I mentally added another entry to the growing list in my head. Later, I'd write it in the small notebook I'd started keeping in my sewing basket. Wednesday. Mark collected mail before delivery. Bank statement due today. Missing. The morning crept by, Mark working on his laptop at the dining room table while I puttered around with my forgetful mom routine. Now where did I put those reading glasses? I'd mumble, shuffling papers aimlessly. All the while, I was counting envelopes, noting which ones disappeared into his briefcase. Around 2 o'clock, I made my excuse about needing an afternoon rest. The moment my bedroom door clicked shut, I heard Mark's footsteps in the hallway. Through the camera feed on my phone, I watched him ease into my room, making a beeline for the dresser. His fingers skimmed the jewelry box again before pulling open the top drawer, where I keep my important papers. Day 2. Drawer check. I labeled the new video clip, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Each file felt like another brick in a wall between us, and Lord, how that hurt. Later that afternoon, I saw Ruth watering her hydrangeas next door. She waved, and I nearly broke right then. Ruth had been my confidant for 30 years. She'd held my hand through Harold's funeral, for heaven's sake. The urge to tell her everything bubbled up like a pot boiling over, but I swallowed it back. You can't spill secrets and expect them to stay contained, no matter how trustworthy the listener. Instead, I spent the rest of the afternoon organizing my utility bills into a locked file box. One Mark didn't know about, tucked away in the back of my closet behind Harold's old golf bags. My hands shook slightly as I sorted through the papers. Each bill represented another piece of my independence, another thing Mark thought he could manage for me. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing up dinner dishes. Mark stood there, manila folder clutched in his hands like he'd just won first prize at the county fair. My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression mild, neutral. Just another evening with my son. "Hey, Mom, got those account updates we talked about?" He spread the papers across the kitchen table. "Just routine stuff, nothing to worry about. Quick signatures, and we're done." I settled into my chair, deliberately fumbling with my glasses case. Oh dear, where did I put my reading glasses this time? "It's all standard, Mom. I've flagged where you need to sign." He pressed a pen into my hand, tapping at a yellow sticky note on the first page. There I sat, pen hovering over the dotted line, heart pounding beneath my cardigan. Through my misplaced reading glasses tucked safely in my pocket, I could make out the words "Power of Attorney" at the top of the page. The next morning hit me like a physical weight. You know that feeling when you're walking downstairs in the dark and miss a step? That's how my stomach felt as I made my way to the breakfast nook, where Mark and his wife Linda were already waiting. The oatmeal I'd made sat cooling in 3 bowls, steam curling, up like question marks. Mark had spread the contract pages across the table in a fan pattern, like he was dealing cards in some twisted game where I could only lose. "Look, Mom," he said, sliding his reading glasses up his nose. "We've gone over everything carefully. It's all about making sure you're taken care of." His tone was honey-sweet, but his eyes kept darting to the papers. Linda nodded, her wedding ring catching the morning light. The care continuity clause is really important, Eleanor. It ensures you'll always have proper support." My eyes skimmed the dense text while my neck grew hot. Property management jumped out at me, along with phrases like transfer of assets and designated facility. Each word felt like another bar in a cage being built around me. "I should get my reading lamp," I said, pushing back from the table. "These old eyes, you know." "Mom, I can just read it to you," Mark offered, reaching for the first page. No, and I think I should call Pastor Joan." I clutched my cardigan closer. She's always good with important decisions. Mark's jaw tightened. We don't need to involve the church, Mom. This is family business. Then let me check Harold's old file. I tried again. Your father always kept copies of everything. Mom, Mark's voice had an edge now. You're stalling. I was, of course, but what choice did I have? If I pushed back too hard, they might decide I couldn't manage on my own anymore, cut me off from my friends, my routine, my independence. But if I signed, Lord help me, I'd be signing away everything Harold and I had built together. My hands trembled as I reached for my water glass. When I spoke, my voice came out thin and reedy, like an old radio losing its signal. I just need my lamp. Won't be but a minute. I made it to my bedroom and closed the door, sagging against it. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, loaded with those damning videos. I pulled it out, thumb hovering over the footage from that first night. Mark's whispered plans about the facility and selling my home played through my head. For one long moment, I nearly crumbled. It would be easier to just sign, wouldn't it? To give in and let Mark handle everything? The pressure was exhausting, and I was so tired of fighting, of pretending I didn't know what he was planning. I clicked play on the video, watching Mark's face as he leaned over my dresser, pointing at my jewelry box, at Harold's wedding band that I kept there. The sight of him eyeing it like some auction item made my chest ache. Paper tells the truth, Ellie. Harold's voice echoed in my memory, clear as if he was standing beside me. He'd said that whenever we made big decisions, always insisting we read every word, understand every clause. Don't sign what you don't understand, and don't trust what you can't verify. I clutched the phone tighter, drawing strength from the evidence it held. No, I wouldn't surrender. Not to this. Not to my own son's betrayal. Mom? Mark called from the kitchen. Did you find that lamp? Just a minute, dear, I called back, but my mind was already racing ahead. I needed help. Someone with legal knowledge. Someone who wouldn't be fooled by Mark's smooth talking. And I needed them tonight, before these papers found their way back onto my kitchen table. I straightened my cardigan, checked my reflection, and opened the bedroom door. Time to play the forgetful mother just a little longer. As soon as the sun dipped behind Mrs. Peterson's maple trees, I got to work. My hands were still shaking from that morning's contract showdown, but I couldn't let fear slow me down. You know that feeling when you're carrying something precious across ice? That's how careful I had to be. I sat on the edge of my bed, the one Harold and I had shared for 42 years, and took 3 deep breaths. The evening light stretched shadows across my quilt, the same one my mother had given us as a wedding gift, now faded, but still sturdy, just like me, I suppose. Okay, Eleanor, I whispered to myself, one step at a time. First, I pulled out the USB drive I'd bought last Christmas when Mark insisted I needed backup storage for my photos. Funny how things come full circle, isn't it? I downloaded every clip from that bedroom camera, labeling each one with dates and times. The file names told their own story. Mark, drawer, check.mp4. Tuesday night, facility, talk.mp4. Mail, intercept, Thursday, MP4. My fingers moved slowly over the keyboard. I'm no tech wizard, but determination makes up for a lot. I created a new email account, something Mark wouldn't know about, and set up one of those cloud storage things. Every video went up there, safe and sound, with copies sent to that new email. Never put all your eggs in one basket, as my mother used to say. Then I grabbed Harold's old notepad, the yellow legal one he'd always used for household accounts. My handwriting wasn't as neat as it used to be, but I wrote everything down. The list went on, each entry another nail in the coffin of my trust. My throat tightened as I wrote, but I kept going. You can cry later, I told myself. Right now, work. I reached for my phone and pulled up Evelyn's number. Harold's sister had always been the sharp one in the family. Retired now, but she'd been a force in the courtroom for 30 years. I could picture her still, sitting at our kitchen table, with her yellow legal pads, meticulously noting every detail of some case or another. You've reached Evelyn Monroe's voicemail, her crisp voice announced. Please leave a message. I kept my voice steady, casual. Evelyn, it's Eleanor. I could use some legal eyes on something. Nothing urgent. That was a lie, but panic wouldn't help. But I'd appreciate your thoughts. Call when you can. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand as I considered where to hide it. Mark knew this house too well. He'd grown up here after all. But some hiding spots are so obvious, they're almost invisible. I lifted my sewing basket, the one that had sat untouched since my arthritis got bad, and slipped the drive under the felt bottom liner. Back on my phone, I cleared the recent files list and deleted the camera app's history. Just in case Mark got nosy, he'd been helping with my phone settings lately. I needed an excuse for meeting Evelyn, something Mark wouldn't question. I rehearsed it in my head. Dr. Matthews wants to adjust my blood pressure medication. Evelyn offered to drive me since you're so busy with work. Simple, believable, and it would buy me the time I needed. The phone on my nightstand lit up, vibrating against the wood. Evelyn's name glowed on the screen like a beacon of hope across my mother's quilt. I reached for it, my heart pounding in my throat. Would you believe I actually hesitated for a moment? Telling someone else would make it real. No more pretending this was all a misunderstanding. But sometimes the truth hurts less than hope, doesn't it? My hand closed around the phone. I chose Rosemary's Tea Room for our meeting. It was far enough from Maple Street that I wouldn't bump into any familiar faces. The place had barely changed since the 1980s, with its doily-lined tables and porcelain cats perched on every windowsill. Just the sort of quiet spot where two women could talk without raising eyebrows. I arrived early, my purse clutched close. The morning crowd had thinned to a few scattered regulars, their newspapers rustling like autumn leaves. The bell above the door chimed, and there was Evelyn, straight-backed as ever, her silver hair swept into a neat bun. She could have stepped right out of her courtroom days. Eleanor. She hugged me briefly, then settled into the chair across from mine. I ordered Earl Grey for both of us. Now, what's this about legal eyes? Have you ever noticed how some moments feel like standing on a cliff edge? That's how it felt, watching Evelyn arrange her napkin, knowing the next words would change everything. I reached into my purse and withdrew the USB drive and Harold's yellow notepad. Before I show you this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, I need to know it stays between us. Evelyn's expression sharpened. She'd worn that same look when Harold and I had asked her to be our executor years ago. Of course. The waitress appeared with our tea, and we waited in silence until she'd moved away. I pushed the USB drive across the table. There's video footage on there, and this, I slid the notepad over, is my timeline of everything that's happened. Evelyn didn't touch her tea. Instead, she pulled out a pen, one of those expensive ones that clicked with authority, and began reading my notes. Her lips pressed thinner with each line, and I could see the lawyer emerging behind her eyes. The camera catches him discussing moving you to a facility, she asked, pen hovering over the page. Yes, him and Linda, in my bedroom after they thought I was asleep. Click went the pen. And the mail interference, you're certain? Bank statements missing, insurance letters. He's been intercepting anything that looks official. She made another note, then looked up at me. 3 weeks, she said flatly. Mark has timelines. These schemes always do. They'll want to move fast once they start the formal process. My teacup rattled against its saucer. 3 weeks? 21 days, give or take. That's typically how long it takes to push, through an emergency conservatorship and property transfer. She drew a small calendar on her napkin. We need to block any power of attorney attempts and protect your accounts before then. The clock on the wall seemed suddenly loud, each tick marking another second lost. What do we do first? Division of labor, Evelyn said, all business now. I'll draft a petition to suspend any POA attempts. We'll file it the moment we have evidence he's trying. Meanwhile, you keep documenting the mail interference, dates, times, everything. I nodded, pulling out my own pen to take notes. What about the camera footage? Keep it running. But we need something else. A current medical evaluation showing you're perfectly competent. When was your last checkup? 3 months ago, Dr. Matthews. Good. Schedule another one. Routine blood pressure check or something similar. We need a paper trail, showing sound judgment and physical independence. The tea had gone cold, but I hardly noticed. We spent the next hour plotting out deadlines and contingencies. Evelyn's napkin calendar became a battlefield map, with X's marking critical dates. She circled a date 2 weeks before month's end. Here's our target, she said, tapping the circle with her pen. We build the case before the knock at the door, before Mark shows up with his notary and his routine papers to sign. I stared at that circled date, feeling the weight of every hour between now and then. 21 days to save my home, my independence, my dignity. Eleanor. Evelyn's hand covered mine. We've got this. Harold always said you were stronger than anyone knew. I squared my shoulders, remembering Harold's words. A Monroe never breaks, he'd say. We bend, we adapt, but we don't break. You know what's harder than discovering betrayal? Pretending you don't know about it. That first week after meeting with Evelyn felt like the longest performance of my life. Here, Mom, let me show you how the new banking app works, Mark said that Monday morning, pulling up a chair next to mine at the kitchen table. His cologne was too strong, masking something sour underneath. I played my part, squinting at the screen. Oh, that's nice, dear. All those pretty icons. But every time he looked away, I snapped photos of the account screens with my old phone, the one he thought I'd stopped using. You'd be surprised how many pictures you can take while pretending to be confused by technology. Have you ever tried to act normal when your heart's breaking? It's exhausting. Every "thank you, sweetheart," and "that's so thoughtful" felt like swallowing glass. But I kept smiling, kept nodding, kept my hands steady even when they wanted to shake. Mark left 3 voicemails that week about placement timing and facility tours. I saved every transcript, copying them word for word into Harold's old ledger. Just thinking about your future, Mom, he'd say, his voice dripping with fake concern. We need to plan ahead. The mail became a daily chess match. I'd watch from the window as Mark collected it, sorting through envelopes right there on the porch. But he didn't know about my arrangement with Ruth next door. She'd been my friend for 30 years. Of course, she said yes when I asked if my duplicate statements could go to her house instead. "Third one this week," Ruth whispered, passing me another envelope during our casual chat over her rose bushes. Bank of America this time. I kept everything in a locked file box under my sewing table, organizing papers with the same care I once used for Harold's, medical records. The evidence pile grew. Photographed screens, saved voicemails, missing mail logs. Each piece felt like another sandbag in the wall I was building. Nights were the hardest. That's when the mask could finally drop, when I didn't have to pretend anymore. One evening, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, pressing Harold's old cardigan to my face. It still smelled faintly of his aftershave, that same brand he'd used since 1975. "I miss you," I whispered into the wool. "I miss knowing who to trust." But come morning, I'd straighten my spine and get back to work. Evelyn called every other day, her voice a lifeline of logic and purpose. "The language needs to be precise," she said during our Wednesday check-in. "We're building this petition word by word. Keep tracking those mail diversions. Patterns matter." I was updating my timeline Thursday afternoon when the text from Mark came through. My phone buzzed against the kitchen table, and there it was. Notary set for the 28th. Be ready to sign. Just like that, our countdown had a deadline. I looked up at Harold's mantel clock, the one that had marked time in our home for 40 years. Tick, tick, tick. 2 weeks until the 28th. 2 weeks until Mark would expect me to sign away everything Harold and I had built. I picked up my phone and sent the screenshot to Evelyn. Her response came back immediately. "Now we know our exact window. Keep gathering, keep documenting. Don't let him see anything's changed." The rest of the evening, I sat in Harold's old armchair, listening to that steady tick-tick-tick. Each sound felt like another second slipping away, another moment closer to the 28th. But unlike the lonely nights before I'd discovered Mark's plan, this time I wasn't just waiting for the inevitable. I picked up my notebook and added another entry. April 14th. Mark sets notary date, 28th. Text saved and forwarded to E. The mantel clock struck 9, its chime echoing through the quiet house. 2 weeks, 14 days. I could do this. I had to do this. The second week felt like preparing for a hurricane. You know that eerie calm while you're boarding windows and stocking supplies? That's what it was like, watching Mark come and go, all smiles, and just checking on you, Mom, while Evelyn and I fortified our defenses. We filed the petition on Monday morning. I still remember sitting in Evelyn's home office, surrounded by stacks of paper and 3 different laptops. She'd insisted on authenticating everything herself, said she didn't trust anyone else with something this important. Each clip needs its own certification, she muttered, filling out forms with that precise handwriting of hers. Timestamps, locations, device specifications. Courts love details. Have you ever watched someone build a legal fortress around you? That's what it felt like, watching her work. She'd pause the footage every few seconds, transcribing conversations word for word. My son's voice, plotting in my own bedroom, reduced to cold exhibit numbers and time codes. Look at this one, she said, rewinding to Mark's whispered conversation about the house listing. Clear premeditation. The judge will see right through him. Dr. Matthews, my physician of 20 years, didn't even blink when I explained why I needed an updated capacity evaluation. Eleanor, he said, checking my blood pressure, you're sharper than half my 40-year-olds. The resulting letter was 3 pages long, detailed enough to satisfy any court. I spent Wednesday afternoon at the bank, trying not to let my hands shake, as I transferred Harold's pocket watch and my grandmother's pearl necklace into a safety deposit box. The teller, young thing named Sarah, helped me set up text alerts for any account changes. Even a penny moves without your approval, Mrs. Monroe. You'll know instantly, she assured me, showing me how the notifications worked on my phone. Back home, I transformed my living room into what Evelyn called Exhibit A of competency. You should have seen it, every bill organized by date, color-coded folders lined up like soldiers, reading glasses placed just so beside my checkbook. The copy of our filed petition sat dead center on the coffee table, impossible to miss. The visual matters, Evelyn had insisted. First impressions count, especially with notaries. They're trained to watch for signs of confusion or coercion. Thursday night, I barely slept. I kept getting up to double-check everything. The phone alerts, the hidden camera feeds, the stack of documented mail diversions. Around midnight, I found myself in Harold's old study, running my fingers over his leather chair. You always said to trust my gut, I whispered to the empty room. The familiar scent of old books and leather polish wrapped around me like a hug. Friday dawned clear and cool. I was up before sunrise, dressed in my blue cardigan, the one Harold always said, made my eyes look bright. I'd just finished arranging my morning tea tray when the doorbell chimed. Through the frosted glass panels, I could see them, Mark's broad shoulders, and beside him, a shorter figure clutching what had to be a briefcase. The notary, right on schedule. The bell rang again, more insistent this time. Mark's silhouette shifted, probably checking his watch. He'd always been impatient, even as a little boy racing through his breakfast. I took one last look around my fortress of documentation. The petition gleamed on the coffee table. My phone sat ready, alerts enabled. 20 feet away, Evelyn waited in her car, just as we'd planned. I touched Harold's wedding ring, which I wore on a chain around my neck, and squared my shoulders. All those weeks of acting confused, playing along, pretending I didn't see what was happening, they ended now. The bell chimed a third time. I walked to the door, my sensible shoes silent on the hardwood floors Harold had installed 40 years ago. Through the glass, I watched Mark's hand rise to ring again. Time to answer. I opened the door with the kind of smile I used to wear at church potlucks, pleasant, but not too eager. "Good morning," I said, stepping back to let them in. "Please, come into the living room." You know that moment when you're so nervous you circle right back, around to calm? That's where I found myself, watching Mark and the notary follow the path of my vacuum tracks across the carpet. Sunlight poured through the bay window, laying bright stripes across the rug Harold and I had picked out for our 30th anniversary. The notary was a thin woman in her 50s, hair pulled back so tight it had to hurt. She placed her briefcase beside the armchair without saying a word. Professional, observant, good. We needed a witness with sharp eyes. "Mom," Mark said, already pulling papers from his portfolio. "I've got everything organized, just a few signatures, and we'll have your future care all sorted out." He spoke like he was explaining things to a child, that same tone he'd used when showing me how to work the new microwave last Christmas. I settled into Harold's old leather recliner, smoothing my cardigan. "Of course, dear. But first, would either of you like some tea? I just brewed a fresh pot of Earl Grey." Mark's jaw tightened. "Mom, the notary's time is valuable. Let's focus on these documents." Have you ever watched someone try to hide their irritation? The way their smile stretches a little too wide, their fingers drum just a bit too fast? That was Mark, spreading papers across my coffee table right next to that court petition he hadn't bothered to notice. "Well then," I said, placing my phone face down on the oak side table, ringer volume up high, "walk me through what I'm signing." The notary, Ms. Peterson, according to her name tag, pulled out her stamp and ledger. She had that careful blank expression that reminded me of poker players at Harold's weekend games. "This first section," Mark tapped a yellow flag, "covers your living arrangements. The facility I found is excellent. Gardens, activities, full-time care, staff." He slid a glossy brochure toward me. "And this part authorizes the property management during your transition." I picked up the brochure, pretending to study photos of smiling seniors playing bingo. "The gardens do look lovely. When did you tour this place, Mark?" He blinked. "What?" "The facility. When did you visit? I'd love to hear what impressed you most about it in person." His fingers stopped drumming. "I researched online. Very thorough reviews." I set the brochure down. "And these property management details, would those include the real estate photos you discussed in my bedroom 2 weeks ago?" The color drained from his face so fast, I actually worried he might faint. Ms. Peterson's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I don't?" Mark started, but I was already reaching for the pen he'd laid out. "Let me just adjust my reading glasses," I said, buying another minute. "The fine print can be so tricky at my age." That's when my phone exploded with sound, the ringtone bouncing off the walls. I turned it over, making sure both Mark and Miss Peterson could see the screen clearly. "Oh my," I said, reading the caller ID. "It's the law office of Denton and Vale. I should probably take this." My finger hovered over the speaker button. "You don't mind, do you? My hearing isn't what it used to be. Speaker works better for me these days." Mark half rose from his chair, but Miss Peterson's sharp look froze him in place. After all, what could he say? That his mother shouldn't answer a call from a law firm while he was trying to get her to sign papers? I pressed the button, my heart drumming so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Hello? This is Eleanor Monroe speaking." "Mrs. Monroe, this is Sarah Mitchell from Denton and Vale. I'm calling regarding the petition filed last week concerning your son Mark Monroe's attempts to claim power of attorney and the associated video evidence." The speaker filled my living room with crisp authority. I watched Mark's hands freeze over the contract pages. "Yes, Ms. Mitchell. I have my son and a notary here right now, actually." Amazing how steady my voice sounded. "They've presented some documents for my signature." You know that moment when you're playing cards and you finally lay down the hand you've been building? That's what this felt like. Only the stakes were my whole life, not just poker chips. "Mrs. Monroe, I need you to listen carefully." Sarah's tone sharpened. The court has reviewed your petition and the supporting evidence. Judge Harrison has just signed an emergency interim order suspending any claimed authority by Mark Monroe over your financial, medical, or residential decisions, effective immediately. Mark's face went from flushed to ghost white so fast I thought he might slide right off his chair. The notary, bless her observant soul, set down her pen like it had suddenly grown hot. The order explicitly prohibits any attempt to transfer property, modify accounts, or relocate you without direct court review, Sarah continued. Do you understand what I'm telling you, Mrs. Monroe? Yes, I do. I could have sworn I felt Harold's hand on my shoulder right then, steady and warm like always. The court has blocked any power of attorney claims my son might make. Correct. Under no circumstances are you to sign any documents presented today. We'll have a deputy deliver the official order within the hour. Do you need me to stay on the line? No, thank you, Ms. Mitchell. I have the copy of our filed petition right here on my coffee table. I reached over and tapped the blue folder. Mark hadn't even noticed. And Ms. Peterson, our notary, has been very professional about witnessing everything. The notary's tight bun bobbed as she gave me a small nod. She'd started packing her stamps with careful, deliberate movements that screamed, "I want no part of this mess." Very good, Mrs. Monroe. Call immediately if you need anything else. The line clicked off, leaving us in thick silence. I picked up the petition copy and held it out to Mark. My hands didn't shake at all. Funny how righteous anger can steady you right up. I believe you'll want to read this, I said, especially the part about the bedroom security camera footage from 2 weeks ago, the one showing you and Caroline planning to sell my house while I slept down the hall. Mark's fingers trembled as he took the papers. You did this to me? His whisper carried more betrayal than my heart could handle, as if I was the one who'd broken faith. The notary snapped her briefcase shut with a click that sounded like justice itself. She stood, smoothing her skirt with one hand while clutching her case with the other. I'll need to document this interaction, she said, all cool professionalism. The attempted power of attorney filing is now void. Mrs. Monroe, do you need me to call anyone for you before I leave? No, thank you, Ms. Peterson. I managed a small smile. I have all the help I need. She gathered her coat and moved toward the door, each step measured and careful, like someone backing away from an unstable situation. Smart woman. Mark just sat there, staring at the petition, his mouth working silently as he hit the paragraphs about the video evidence. The morning sun still striped the carpet between us, but now it felt like bars, holding him in place while justice finally caught up. You recorded me? He looked up, and for a second, I saw the little boy who used to cry when he skinned his knees. Your own son? No, Mark. I touched Harold's wedding ring where it hung on the chain around my neck. You recorded yourself. You ever notice how news travels faster than summer lightning in a small town? Those next 2 days after Mark stormed out felt like watching dominoes fall. Only each domino was another piece of his reputation, crumbling. The first call came from Betty at the church quilting circle. Eleanor, honey, is everything all right? We're hearing some concerning things about Mark. I settled into Harold's old armchair, running my fingers over the worn fabric. What kind of things, Betty? About him trying to take your house? Force you into a facility? Her voice wobbled. Tell me it's not true. I wish I could. The words tasted bitter, but truth always comes before comfort. Every bit of it's documented in court filings now. That opened the floodgates. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Seems word spreads mighty quick when someone files a petition showing your son plotting against you on camera. Around noon, Ruth brought over a coffee cake and showed me Pastor Jones' email to the congregation board. You know that tone ministers get when they're being diplomatic, but deeply disappointed? Joan had it down perfect. In light of recent legal documentation regarding attempts to dispossess a vulnerable member of our flock, we must address the spiritual implications of elder exploitation. I hadn't touched Facebook in years. Harold always said social media was more trouble than a fox in a hen house. But Evelyn kept me updated on that front. Mark's first posts disappeared faster than cookies at a bake sale, replaced by long-winded explanations about misunderstandings and doing what's best for Mom. Didn't help his case when people started sharing screenshots of the public court records. "He's digging himself deeper," Evelyn said during our evening check-in. "Every time he tries to justify it, someone else pulls up the petition details. The video timestamps are particularly damning." Between calls, I kept myself busy with practical matters. Changed every password I had. Set up those fancy two-step verifications Evelyn recommended. Spent a whole morning at the bank making sure my accounts were locked down tighter than a storm cellar. Even had them double-check the house deed. Clean as a whistle, thank the Lord. You know what felt strangest? The quiet. That same living room where Mark had tried to steal my life just days ago now sat peaceful as a Sunday morning. The mantel clock Harold had wound. Every night for 30 years kept steady time. Tick-tock, tick-tock, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, hadn't it? When your own flesh and blood shows their teeth, the world shifts under your feet. Evelyn's text came as the sun was setting. Hearing date set, evidence is solid, they won't touch what's yours. I sat there watching shadows stretch across the carpet, thinking about trust and betrayal and justice. The jewelry box still waited by the window where I'd left it that morning. Harold's mother's pearls inside, the ones Mark's wife had been eyeing in that damning video. Remember what I said about how greed buries its own children? Watching Mark's careful facade crack under the weight of his own recorded words proved that old saying true. His reputation was crumbling faster than week-old cornbread, and he'd built every bit of that collapse himself. The mantel clock chimed 7, each note as clear as the day Harold brought it home. Some things stay true, I thought, no matter how the world changes around them. Like the weight of evidence, like consequences finding their mark, like justice, slow but sure as sunrise. I reached for the jewelry box, my fingers brushing its familiar carved surface. Time for one last ritual before bed, one that would have to wait for tomorrow's telling. The sun was setting when I finally sat down at my bedroom window, pulling back the lace curtains just enough to let those last golden rays spill across the sill. Funny how the same window Mark and his wife had stood by, plotting their scheme, now offered such peace. I settled into the cushioned chair Harold had insisted I keep there. "Every lady needs her thinking spot," he'd say with that gentle smile of his. The familiar creak of springs felt like an old friend's embrace. The jewelry box sat waiting, its cherry wood warm in the evening light. Even after 48 years, the lid still opened smooth as silk. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, Harold's wedding band caught the sun and winked at me like we shared a secret. You ever notice how gold holds memories? As I lifted that ring, my fingertips remembered every time I'd polished it over the years. Harold had worn it proud until the day he passed, and I'd kept up. His Saturday night ritual, a soft cloth, a gentle touch, and time to think. "Look at that shine, Ellie," he used to say, "like new every time." The ring felt heavier than usual tonight, weighted with everything that had happened. Mark's scheme had crumbled faster than autumn leaves, but Lord, the cleanup had been thorough. The court order came through crystal clear. His power of attorney dreams were dead and buried. No more handling my mail. No more routine updates to sign. No more whispered plans in my bedroom after dark. But it wasn't just the legal victory that settled my heart. Word had spread through our little community like wildfire in dry grass. The congregation that had watched Mark grow up now saw him clear as day. Pastor Jones' disappointment carried weight. She'd baptized his children, after all. And the neighbors? Well, small towns have long memories. I picked up the polishing cloth and started working it over the ring's surface, breathing in the clean lemon scent from the freshly oiled frame on my dresser. The house creaked and settled around me, comfortable as an old hound finding its favorite spot. These walls had stood firm through Mark's betrayal, solid as my own resolve. "We did right by you," I whispered to Harold's ring. "Kept everything safe, just like you would have wanted." The gold warmed under my fingers as I worked, each gentle circle bringing out more shine. Some folks might have chosen bitterness after what happened, but I had different plans. My future would be quieter now. Early mornings with Earl Grey, afternoon checks of my locked files, and trust measured out careful as baking powder in a recipe. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, isn't it? Mark had wanted my house, my savings, my independence, everything Harold and I had built together. Instead, he lost his good name and any claim to authority over my affairs. Greed may whisper sweet promises, but it sure carries a bitter aftertaste. I held the ring up to catch the last ray of sunset. It flashed like a lighthouse beam, strong and steady against gathering dusk. Harold had always said jewelry tells stories if you listen close enough. This ring had witnessed our wedding day, our struggles, our triumphs, and now it had witnessed justice being served. The truth I learned through all this settled in my chest, solid as that gold band. Greed buries its own children, not with violence or vengeance, but with the quiet weight of consequences, as natural as gravity pulling rain from clouds. I tucked the ring back in its velvet nest, letting my fingers linger on its warmth one last time. The house sighed around me, and I could have sworn I felt Harold's presence, proud as ever, watching over home and hearth.